Hey, how's it going? It's your boy Adam Mobalytics, Challenger Coach, here to bring you our 10.11 LoL tier list, so let's just get started. Starting off in the top lane, our S tier roster will be Mordekaiser, Fiora, and in God tier we've got Garen, Nasus, and Darius. For the changes to the list, we've got Maokai going down from S tier to A tier. Post-nerfs in the last couple of patches, Maokai has been seeing less and less play, and if not completely overpowered, people just tend to drop this champion and his play rate has gone way down, although his run rate is still okay, definitely not enough to still remain in S tier. Although he's still pretty good and would be at the top of A tier. That means for our first highlighted change, we've got the Dunk Master Darius going from S tier to God tier. He currently holds a 52% win rate, 11% pick rate, and a 50% ban rate. He is one of the most feared top laners in low elo due to his ability to easily snowball to the point that he can 1v2 or 1v3 ganks. He doesn't even need a minimap really, he just kind of just takes on all challengers, and if he's fed enough he kills everyone. And let's be real now, sometimes it's not even your fault. Sometimes one dude just lets his passive fully proc, they get executed and he gets the reset, and now he just kills everyone. That's just how reset champions work. I would like to mention one thing though briefly about his setup, or at least two things. One is Ghost versus pretty much any other summoner spell that isn't Flash. I mean, it's just way better statistically. It's better than Ignite, it's better than Teleport, it's better than Ghost Cleanse. I mean, it's definitely better than Ghost Cleanse, but still, I highly recommend taking Ghost Flash on Darius pretty much every single game. In terms of itemization, some people are still going Black Cleaver on him, but it is significantly worse than Trinity Force. So if you're going Ghost with Trinity Force on Darius, expect to carry games a lot harder. Next up, we've got Hecarim going from off the list to B tier. He got some really nice buffs on this patch to his Q damage, which should help him out in the top lane more than in the jungle, as he's going to get to use it a lot more often. He's got some pretty strong meta matchups in the top lane too. In the Ornn, Aatrox, Aurelia, and he can even contest Darius, although he does lose horribly to one of the other god champions, Garen, so just, kind of watch out for that matchup. He does have two interesting setups that you can actually check out on our channel in our Hecarim top lane video if you want some more details on them, but you'll see a very standard one shown up on your screen right now. Expect to see him rise up to A tier over the next couple of patches as more and more pros have been playing him in solo queue, which means his play rate is likely to increase as he's actually a pretty strong top laner right now. Last up for the top lane highlights, let's talk about Volibear as he just got a rework, and you're probably all really interested in how well he's doing. He's actually the worst champion in the game. Now, apparently this was within Riot's expectations in terms of his initial win rate, as it's currently 40% in the top lane. Now, Riot did mention that they expect it to increase as his kit is a little bit more complicated than in the past, but if that doesn't happen, they do plan on buffing him, so don't worry. Although, some people might be thinking, oh man, it's 40% win rate, that must be a low sample size, right? That's why his win rate's so low, and there's not that many people playing him. Nope, not at all. He's got a 12% pick rate and is the most popular low elo top laner in the game. But that doesn't make any sense. I mean, Volibear's gotta be pretty good, right? He's got a 40% ban rate. No, actually, I'm pretty sure his ban rate is because no one wants them on his team. Now, he also doesn't do well in the jungle with also identical win rate and pick rate, although pretty close. The issues I've seen with him is that people are misusing his E as it's kind of hard to land and might be a little bit too slow, and I'm not really sure about the Q becoming a stun instead of the flip. I kind of think the flip was a little bit better. But like I mentioned, Riot does plan on buffing him, and so I did want to mention he's not going to be on the tier list, at least not this one, because yeah, he's just awful right now. In the jungle, our starting S tier roster will be Master Easy, Zac, Echo, and Graze, and for the God tier we've got Warwick, Kayn, Fiddlesticks, and Trundle. For the changes, we've got Hecarim going from B tier to A tier. The buffs, just like in top lane, were really nice, although you won't notice an increase in your clear speed. I mean, you won't notice that much. You will notice an increase in your early game dueling power is much higher, so you can actually skirmish and kill people and do things. His win rate went up by around 2%, and his pick rate went up 2% as well this patch. Let's talk about Ghost versus Knight briefly, as a lot of Hecarim players kind of have a debate between which one they should use. Ghost is significantly more popular, but Ignite, the win rate on it is very much higher, and in High-ELO, it is probably the most common option, so I'd really recommend testing out Ignite because when you get the extra damage from your Q and Ignite, you can beat a lot of people 1v1. Now, there's also a debate between Warriors and Cinderhulk, and Warriors does significantly better, especially when you snowball. So Warrior plus Ignite if you want to dominate that early game. For the next change, we've got Graves going from God tier to S tier. The nerfs to his Q damage actually hurt him more than what most people, including me, expected, at least in low elo, so we moved him down just outside of God tier to the top of S tier. And a lot of it actually comes down to a lot of champions rose up on this patch to take his place, and to be honest, that's kind of the reason he dropped more so than the actual nerfs. The next change we've got for you is Xin Zhao is going to go from A tier to B tier. He was doing better for a couple of patches, and then people remembered, well, he's just kind of like a cheese level 2 ganker and level 3 ganker, and then he gets outscaled, which is kind of more common in low elo for it to happen because the games last longer. So he's still doing okay in high elo, but definitely significantly worse than low elo. That means for our first highlighted change, we've got Trundle going from S tier to God tier. He's probably one of the best low elo junglers, period, right now. He's extremely versatile and strong. He can be an anti-carry, he can be a carry, he can be a tank, he can do a bunch of damage depending on what build you go. You know, there's definitely Cinder Hulk builds with Trendy Force, Warrior builds, there's Borg builds with Cinder Hulk, there's full tank. Pretty much whatever your team needs to actually be successful, Trundle can likely bring that. He does all of it pretty much by himself too. He's got easy clear, very healthy, pretty fast. He can solo neutral objectives, fairly safe invades, super good dueling 1v1. His ganks with Pillar are surprisingly good, especially against immobile targets. But he can actually still play for the team because he's got good peeling tools and he can actually deny the enemy frontline and become the frontline himself. He's actually my #1 recommendation for any jungler right now in low elo if you want to climb. Next up, let's talk about one of the most hyped rework champions, Fiddlesticks, as he's gonna go from S tier to God tier, and stat-wise, he definitely deserves it. A 54% win rate, a 7% pick rate, and even a 7% ban rate. The champ just caught buffs after buffs after buffs, and you know, the player base learned to optimize him a little bit better on top of those buffs. His build's a little bit more optimized now with things like Zhonya's into Oblivion Orb into Leandri's, or you can skip the Oblivion Orb altogether. He's also a God Slayer and is the only champion to have a winning matchup into Trundle. Legitimately, the only champion in low elo that can beat Trundle is Fiddlesticks because, you know, he can't really steal Fiddlesticks' stats and he has way bigger teamfight impact. He does lose out to Shyvana, Mundo, and Warwick, and I mean, a very good Kindred can also deny Fiddlesticks due to her ultimate, but Fiddlesticks is one of the champions you want to pick up right now if you're looking to climb and you don't feel like playing something completely dumb like Trundle. The last champion I wanted to highlight is actually Wukong, who currently sits in A tier, and it's not just for the jungle, I just wanted to highlight Wukong in general because I don't understand why he's not as popular as what he should be. Oddly enough, he is more popular in High-ELO and even in competitive play than he is in low elo, especially in the top lane, which is completely bizarre to me. As, you know, in the past, Wukong was way more popular in low elo than pretty much any other bracket, especially in the jungle. Now, in competitive play, he has been stomping games in those LPL versus LCK matches recently and is banned pretty often and considered S tier for the top lane, although less powerful in the jungle. He's just such a strong champion right now. Either way, it's a pretty good time to be maining Wukong as he isn't picked or banned that frequently despite his power, so I recommend picking him up either in the jungle or in the top lane. And you know what, it doesn't really matter too much. You can either queue jungle top jungle, and just pick Wukong in either role, and you're probably gonna climb right now in low elo. He's really a sleeper pick, which kind of sounds odd. For the mid lane though, our starting S tier roster will be Lux, Annie, and Yasuo, with our god tier being Fizz and Diana. This is literally the darkest timeline low elo mid lane right now. You got Annie, Lux, and Yasuo in S tier, plus, you know, whatever Fizz and Diana count as. It's gonna be a fun time. Anyways, for the changes, we've got Lux going from A tier to S tier. The buffs to her E were intended to help her as a support mostly, but it made her an incredibly strong and reliable mid laner as it allows her to more easily walk up to proc her passive and or land her Q with the increased slow, or even just as a utility spell. Expect to see a lot of Lux this patch, but I'll talk a little bit more about her in the support section. Then we've got Ahri, Talon, and Echo all moving from S tier to A tier this patch, as they were pretty borderline S tier in the previous patch, and more deserving champions like Annie have taken their place, though Talon specifically was hit by a nerf to his Q healing that makes his laning phase kind of less brain dead, or I should be a little bit more politically correct, less user friendly, and I think everyone's okay with that though. Syndra, on the other hand, who's one of the most popular and overpowered mid laners, especially in High-ELO, moves from A tier to B tier. Syndra was hit with a nerf to her ECD, meaning that she can be punished a little bit easier in the laning phase, and it had a fairly big change in her stats, dropping her below 50% win rate, and her pick rate went from around 9% to 7% in gold. Now for the good stuff, our first highlighted change will be Yasuo, unfortunately going from A tier to S tier, and he is the most popular mid laner in the game right now, and Fi has been lobbying for weeks in our tier list meeting for me to put him S tier, and finally I'm kind of forced to because he has been very close to S tier in the last couple of patches, especially after the changes to Death's Dance, allowing him to be super tanky and very hard to deal with once he hits 3 items. He did get an indirect buff on this patch, which is the thing that kind of tipped him over the edge with the Zeal item changes. I mean, obviously they only got a little bit of a movement speed increase, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's not that much, it's not gonna matter. But movement speed increases are always super impactful. For example, a lot of people like to meme when Riot takes away 5 movement speed from Kassadin or like Aurelia, but it actually hurt their win rates significantly. Even Miss Fortune was like the god of 80 carry, and when they took away movement speed from her passive, she became significantly worse. When you give a champion extra movement speed, it helps in situations that you really wouldn't expect. It means that Yasuo, for example, when when he dies, he can run back to lane faster, which will help him hit his O10 power spike faster. You see what I'm talking about now? Really useful in this champion. But in all seriousness, Yasuo is one of the only champions in the game who rushes his Zeal item first, so he's actually one of the champions that benefits the most from these changes. Next up, we've got the low elo goddess, and she has returned in all of her glory, and Annie's gonna go from A tier to S tier. She currently holds a 54% win rate and a 3% pick rate and almost 0% ban rate in silver. I mean, but Adam, those stats are, they're in silver. She isn't that good the more up you climb. There's no real reason to play her because then you're just kind of picking Annie and then you gotta change your champion pool once you climb up, and that's just really annoying. I'm gonna main Yasuo. Well, fun fact, I actually lied to you. Those stats are from Plat. Yeah, she's got a 54% win rate in Platinum, so there are zero excuses now. If you want to improve at the game and get some LP, Annie is your gospel. You'll see her most common build up on the screen, but I do recommend trying out an up-and-coming build, which is Rallies into Leandries with either Comet or Electrocute. It's pretty much preference at that point, but definitely pick up Annie if you're newer to mid lane. Last up for the mid lane highlight and changes, my favorite champion, Twisted Fate, goes from B tier to A tier. Riot's just been buffing him a little bit over the last couple of patches with some mana decreases on his ultimate, some extra AD, some AP scaling on his W, and it's been really nice for all the Twisted Fate players, especially me. Though the big thing about him is that now he's got a new hybrid build that's been popping off lately, and a lot of people have been testing it out, where you go Trinity Force into a Hextech item. I've tested out this setup personally quite a bit, and it feels extremely overpowered when you snowball, but kind of bad if you fall behind compared to the AP version. It's also a lot harder to pilot since the build variations are larger. You really need to know your itemization, and you need a little bit more APM since you're going to be auto attacking and you have less wave clear, so you're a little bit less safe during the laning phase. This Trinity Force setup though excels at snowballing and 1v1ing as well as skirmishing compared to the AP version. So if you're kind of a manly TF player, you like to play aggressive, this is the setup for you. Personally though, of course, I'm a Dopa fanboy, so I prefer his AP style, mostly because I'm used to it. I know it's power spikes, I feel it's more consistent. Plus, one-shotting towers or AD carries with blue card in the late game is super fun. So I highly recommend either style, but the hybrid style is viable and strong when mastered. It's just a little bit harder and more volatile, but I'm gonna put it up on the screen for you right here. Moving down the bot lane, we have our starting S tier roster of Ashe, Kaylin, Miss Fortune, Ezreal, and Yasuo, while in God tier we've got Jhin and Vayne. For the changes, we've got Kai'Sa going from B tier to A tier. Riot's favorite retail employee, who clearly works on commission because of all the outfits she ends up selling every single day, has returned to the meta, and it's not by accident either. And not only did she get the same HP increases that the other marksmen got this patch, she did also get her own set of buffs because she's not a typical Zeal user, and she wasn't doing that well prior, and so Riot thought that she needed a little bit extra help. What she got was some extra Q damage on the AD ratio as well as a longer R range for better playmaking during the late game. In terms of her setup, it didn't actually change that much. You're still going to want to go the AP variant of Kai'Sa because it's by far the strongest compared to AD. This doesn't mean that the buff to her AD ratio didn't actually matter, as it does increase her early game damage output by quite a bit because she does build AD early on and then swaps into AP afterwards, kind of a little bit of a hybrid. But with these changes, Kai'Sa has once again become the second most popular AD carry, and expect to see her a lot in High-ELO games and even in competitive play. So if you're looking for a champion that's pretty fun and you want to master and you know you're going to get a new skin every couple of months, pick Kai'Sa. Our next change to the list will actually be Aphelios moving from B tier to A tier. He's one of the champions who got one of the biggest benefits from the AD carry buffs this patch. He's very squishy, and so the HP helps, and because he's immobile, the extra movement speed on Zeal is extremely useful for him. It lets him bring out his full potential from training 200 years in the hyperbolic time chamber, followed by being able to one-shot you with almost any gun combination, just in a different sadistic way. Oh, what's that? You're getting killed from a mile away because of his sniper rifle and shotgun combination? Cool, let me get into close range. Oh, he's got the pistol and he just heals 1v3 and kills everyone because he's got a Lulu healing him. By the way, that Lulu Aphelios combo is absurdly powerful. I think it's the season 10 version of Kog'Maw Lulu. It's incredibly strong. If you're ever playing Aphelios, you should definitely ask for a Lulu. If you're a Lulu, you should definitely ask for an Aphelios. This combination is extremely powerful. Though it can be a little bit difficult to grasp Aphelios at first, he is worth the time investment when mastered, and you'll be able to main him until he probably your LCS or a world champion, so there's that going for you. Last up for the bot lane list, we've actually got Yasuo going from A tier to S tier. It's similar as to why he's doing better in the mid lane. The Zeal item buffs were a big help for Yasuo in general, but in the bot lane, he obliterates marksman champions. I mean, just in general, not just bot lane, I guess. But actually getting to lane versus a marksman, it's pretty nice for Yasuo, I'm not gonna lie, and that means that he pretty much only has one losing matchup in the bot lane, which coincidentally is Vayne. Both those champions just have so much outplay potential to the point where the user just can't handle it. I think it's called Yasuo syndrome at this point, or Vayne spotting, either one is acceptable. They just run at each other till one of them or both of them die. It actually must be a really fun and funny matchup combo to just watch. Alright, back to the main point though. Yasuo bot lane is not just some random cheese pick that isn't actually very good once people get very good at the game. He's actually doing extremely well in competitive play right now, especially paired with Gragas support. That means you should be looking to learn Yasuo bot lane if he's actually open in low elo, because I mean, he's not open that often, only 50% of the time, but many Yasuo mains actually believe the best role for him is bot lane at the moment, because in mid lane he's got a lot of counter matchups and it's kind of easier to be ganked in the mid lane. What I mean by that is, even though it's a shorter lane, in bot lane there's this person called a support, and sometimes they're very willing to give up their life for you and let you escape, which is very convenient. Also, one tip for playing Yasuo bot lane, I highly recommend you actually take Exhaust Flash as your summoner spells, because there's almost no counterplay to this. You just E in, use Wind Wall, AD carry can't auto attack, exhaust them, and then they can't auto attack, and then they get knocked up, and then they die. Last up, our support S tier roster will be Leona, Nami, Yuumi, Thresh, while in God tier we've got Blitzcrank and Nunu. For the changes, we've got Maokai going down from A tier to B tier. He's doing kinda okay, but his play rate is struggling, and with less melee supports being popular, he's less useful, and he does end up getting outscaled by enchanters even if he does manage to win the laning phase. And it's even harder for him to even do that, as his engaged tools are very limited when his flash is down. He was more of an anti-Leona, anti-Nautilus pick, and since those champions are somewhat less popular, he's not going to be as effective. That means that unfortunately for our first highlight, we have Lux support going from B tier to A tier. Currently holds a 51.5% win rate, an 8% pick rate in gold. The buffs were actually really good for her, but funny enough has a stronger impact on her mid lane placement. The E-slow lingering longer is actually huge for her kit because it allows her to walk up and get that poke damage from her passive. It also allows her more time to aim her Q before she ends up inevitably missing it, or it'll actually allow her to slow people as she runs away, and it allows her to kite easier during gank situations or even during team fights. She's a pretty viable mage/enchanter hybrid, which makes most ADC mains kind of want to cry inside, because I know a lot of people do not like playing with Lux support, especially when they skip their support item for Doran's Ring, which I can't believe is still a thing. To help out a bit though, she does at least do bad in High-ELO, but you know, on the low elo list, expect to see her in both mid lane and support pretty frequently with that annoying laugh. I should say something positive about her, in that she's really good into linear engage champion. Things like Rakan and Alistar are really easy to line up your Q and then escape and just outscale them post laning phase with those massive W shields. She is actually a viable support champion, but just, you know, most people don't play her as one. Next up, a champion that's actually very similar to Lux, we've got Morgana moving from B tier to A tier. Morgana initially took a big hit on these patches because Enchanter champions came back into the meta, and Morgana typically does not do well, as she is the worst scaling Enchanter in the entire game. That means that due to her kind of less aggressive laning nature, she doesn't actually bully the lane hard enough to do anything to actually end up not getting outscaled by the other Enchanters, like Yuumi for example, who can just AFK and then beat Morgana. She did bounce back recently though, as people remembered that this is a thing that can actually happen, and they don't blind pick Morgana as often. She is still one of the strongest counter picks in the game against hook and engage supports, and is kind of around a 35% ban rate in gold, which is lower than it was before, as people are starting to realize that, yeah, AFKing on enchanters is a viable strategy in this meta, especially because AD carries are getting stronger, and there are strong AD carries on this patch like Aphelios or even Vayne, who are just incredibly broken when you pair them with an enchanter support with Arden. That doesn't mean that Morgana is actually bad right now, because engage supports are still quite popular, especially Leona for example, or any of the hook champions. Blitzcrank, Pyke, Thresh, doesn't really matter. They still get picked a decent amount, so Morgana can still pick up a lot of free wins from counterpicking them. That means that our last change for the tier list is actually going to be Taric moving from B tier to A tier. After his nerfs in the prior patch, thanks to his association with Master Yi, he has bounced back. He's got a good mix of scaling and anti-engage. Due to him being one of the best scaling champions in the game, the normal weakness of melee supports being outscaled by enchanters is somewhat nullified, because guess what, he is one of those scaling enchanters, and he's a damn fine looking one too. Not to mention, with AD carries being somewhat more worth protecting on this particular patch, Taric's win rate has increased slightly because of this good synergy. In terms of AD carries that he works well with, he's extremely good with champions like Yasuo, Jhin, Twitch in particular, Aphelios, Ashe, and of course Kalista. although to be honest, he works well with most AD carries besides Xayah and slightly Ezreal. Although to be honest, I put most of the blame on that failed relationship with Ezreal because it's not me, the Taric player's fault, it's likely the Ezreal player's fault for not using auto attacks and missing all of your Qs. But at the very least, when he's paired with something like Vayne, Vayne's not going to miss any skill shots, be invulnerable, and then tumble around killing everyone while thinking they're Gosu. If you want a strong scaling support who can actually frontline, I definitely go with Taric, and that's why he's pretty strong in this meta. That's it, folks. That's all I got for this video, though. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out our other content on this channel, as well as at mobalytics.gg. As always, I'm Adam Moriarty Isles, and may the new and old solo key gods be with you.